imagining the worst to appreciate the best. This ancient trick will make you love your life, even when it's falling apart. I want to take you back to a moment you might never forget. Because I'll never forget mine. Imagine this. I'm standing in the emergency room, clutching the side of the hospital bed, and watching someone I love more than life itself struggle to breathe. The room smells like sterile bleach. There's a steady, high-pitched beeping in the background, and I feel totally helpless. In that moment, nothing else matters. Not my phone, not my plans, not my career. Just one thought plays over and over in my head: please, just let them be okay. That was the moment I realized I'd been taking the best parts of life for granted, until they were nearly gone. And that's exactly what this video is about. Not sadness, not tragedy, but the raw power of imagining the worst, so you can finally appreciate the best. I know that might sound crazy. Why would you want to imagine something horrible? Why would you want to think about losing everything you care about? Because, as the Stoics discovered over 2,000 years ago, there's a secret that can change your entire relationship with life. And it starts by imagining its darkest moments. Not to become depressed, but to become invincible. And what I'm about to share with you might just save your life. Let's begin. Most people think that the way to happiness is by adding more. More success, more love, more stuff. But Stoicism flips that on its head. It says, if you want to be truly happy, take a moment and imagine losing what you already have. It sounds brutal, but the truth is, life is fragile, and the Stoics knew this better than anyone. They had a name for this practice: premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It means vividly picturing the worst-case scenario, on purpose, so that you stop taking life for granted and start cherishing every beautiful second of it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you really felt gratitude? Not the kind you post online, but the kind that makes you cry just because the sun is still shining? If you're like most of us, it's been a while. That's where this Stoic technique comes in. It's not about being morbid. It's about training your mind to wake up. You see, I used to be the guy chasing goals endlessly, hustling, grinding, posting, but inside, I was numb. Nothing impressed me anymore. Even when I succeeded, I'd feel empty. I didn't know why, until I read something from Seneca that hit me like a punch in the soul. He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. In other words, the man who has already imagined the worst is free from fear. And do you know what happens when you're free from fear? You start to appreciate everything. I tried it. I actually sat down, closed my eyes, and imagined losing my home. I imagined being alone. I imagined the phone call that said, "It's too late." I imagined not being able to walk, or see, or speak again. I imagined dying. And then, I opened my eyes. The sunlight pouring through the window felt like a miracle. The sound of laughter outside hit me in the chest. My hands worked. My legs worked. My heart was beating. I was alive. And for the first time in years, I felt it. Now imagine this. What if you did this every morning for just 1 minute? What if, instead of rolling over and checking your phone, you reminded yourself, I might not wake up tomorrow. My loved ones might not either. Today is a gift. You wouldn't waste it scrolling. You wouldn't waste it fighting with someone you care about. You'd live. And this isn't some vague self-help advice. There's real power here. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who could have had anything he wanted, wrote in his personal journal, not for anyone else, but for himself. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. He called it memento mori. Remember you must die, not as a way to be sad, but as a way to stop being asleep. Let me tell you about a man named James Stockdale. He was a Navy pilot shot down during the Vietnam War. Captured, tortured, locked in solitary confinement for years. How did he survive? He said it was Stoicism. He imagined the worst before it happened. He prepared his mind for pain, for loss, for humiliation, and that preparation gave him strength. But here's the twist. the ones who didn't survive. They were the optimists, the ones who kept hoping. We'll be out by Christmas. And then Christmas would come and go. And their hearts broke. Stockdale survived because he faced reality before it arrived. He expected the worst, and used it to build mental armor. Now, I'm not saying you need to be locked in a prison cell to use this power. But I am saying this: the next time you find yourself annoyed by something small, traffic, a delay, someone cutting you off, imagine, for just a moment, that this could be the last day you ever get to experience it. What if today was the final time you felt your feet on the ground? What if this meal you're about to eat was your last? Would you still scroll through it? Or would you taste it? Would you still complain about your job? Or would you be grateful you have one? This is the shift. This is what Stoicism gives us. Not a life without problems, but a life where we see clearly. Because when you imagine the worst, you finally start living at your best. And this leads us to a moment that changed my entire worldview. One that still gives me chills to this day. I was on a trip. I met an old man, sitting alone at the edge of a temple in Kyoto, Japan. He didn't speak English, but we shared a moment. I asked the guide what he said. He said, "Every day, I imagine my wife is already gone. And then I turn to her, and love her like it's the first time and the last time." That's Stoicism. That's love. That's life. When we realize how fragile it all is, we finally realize how beautiful it all is. But what happens when you actually lose something? When the nightmare becomes real? That's when everything you've prepared for gets put to the test. And in part 2, I'm going to tell you exactly how I faced my greatest fear. And how that moment brought me more gratitude than I ever thought possible. I lost everything, and that's when I discovered the truth Stoics have known for centuries. I told you I'd faced something that shattered my world. That moment came when I lost my father. It wasn't sudden, it was slow, like watching a star dim in real time. And no matter how much you prepare, no matter how much you imagine it, the real thing hits different. But here's what changed everything. Months before he passed, I had been diving deep into Stoic philosophy. I was practicing premeditatio malorum, imagining life without the people I loved, not to push them away, but to bring them closer. Every day, I'd ask myself, what if today was the last time I saw him? What if this hug was the final one? What if that joke he told was the last I'd ever hear? So instead of brushing him off when I was tired, I stayed. Instead of rushing our conversations, I leaned in. I let him ramble. I asked more questions. I listened like every word mattered. Because it did. And then, when the day came, I didn't just grieve. I celebrated every second I'd gotten because I had imagined losing it ahead of time. I'll be honest, it hurt. It still does. But Stoicism didn't make me numb. It made me grateful. You see, this isn't about pretending life doesn't hurt. It's about becoming strong enough to carry the weight of reality and still smile. That's the power of this practice. Let's get real. Most people live like they're immortal. We wake up thinking we have time. We say, later. We postpone love, forgiveness, appreciation, because we think we'll always get another chance. But that's a lie. One day, you won't. And the Stoics didn't see that as tragic. They saw it as liberating. Let me give you something practical. Try this. Tonight, before you fall asleep, take just 60 seconds. Close your eyes and imagine. What if I never wake up? Don't just say it, feel it. What would you regret not doing? Not saying? Not being? Now, wake up tomorrow and do that thing. That's how you start living on fire. Because the more you imagine death, not in a fearful, obsessive way, but in a courageous, awakening way, the more alive you become. And yes, some people will say, but isn't that depressing? No, what's depressing is wasting your life on autopilot. What's depressing is not realizing the value of your breath until you lose it. Let me tell you about another moment. I once watched a man cry over a cracked mug. It was in a village cafe in Greece. The waiter dropped it, And this old man gasped and whispered, "That mug was my wife's favorite." Everyone went silent. The manager rushed over to apologize. But the man just smiled through tears and said, "It's okay. Nothing lasts forever. That's what makes it precious." That, right there, is Stoicism in action. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about feeling it fully, honoring it, and letting it teach you something deep. You and I were walking miracles. Billions of heartbeats, trillions of breaths, and yet we treat our lives like they're disposable. But what if we stopped? What if, instead of constantly reaching for more, we started looking at what we already have with awe? That's what the Stoics did. They didn't own much, but they were rich, not in money, but in meaning. Seneca said it best, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." And imagining the worst? That gives you the ultimate power. Because once you've mentally lived through the loss of something, you're no longer owned by it. You're free to love it deeply, without clinging. Let's talk about love for a second. Most of us love out of fear. We grip tightly, afraid to lose someone. But Stoic love is different. It's rooted in freedom. It says, "I know you could be gone tomorrow, so I will love you with everything I have today." That kind of love is fearless. It's divine. It changes how you argue. It changes how you listen. It changes how you show up. This is what imagining the worst actually does. It clears the fog from your eyes. It strips away the noise. It pulls you out of the illusions and back into what's real. And what's real is this: you won't have forever. So you'd better make now count. Let's flip the script. Instead of being afraid to lose your job, imagine it's already gone. How would you live differently? Instead of fearing heartbreak, imagine the relationship has ended. What would you wish you'd said? Instead of running from aging, imagine you're already on your deathbed. What would matter then? The answers to those questions? That's your truth. That's your real life. And the Stoics knew, if you live with that awareness, you live without regret. So here's what I challenge you to do. Once a week, write your own eulogy. Sounds dark, right? But it's powerful. Write how you want to be remembered. Not the job title, not the stuff, but the impact, the love, the truth you stood for. Then ask yourself, am I living like that person today? If not, adjust. You only get one shot at this. And every second you waste wishing things were different is a second you could have used to love what already is. That's why I started doing something weird. Every morning, before I check my phone, before I get up, I whisper to myself, "This could be the last sunrise I ever see. Make it count." It changes everything. Suddenly, coffee becomes sacred, a conversation becomes unforgettable, a walk in silence becomes a spiritual experience. And when life does hit me, because it always will, I'm ready, not because I'm cold, but because I've practiced seeing clearly. I've imagined the storm, so I can appreciate the calm. I've stared at the darkness, so I can see the light. And when you do that, nothing owns you anymore. You become unshakable. You become awake. And that brings us to the most important part of this journey. Because in the final part, I'm going to reveal how this practice, this ancient, uncomfortable, mind-shifting Stoic tool, not only helped me overcome fear and loss, but also led me to a joy so deep, so real, I didn't even know it existed. This 2,000-year-old trick gave me the most unexpected joy of my entire life. There was a morning, not long ago, when I woke up and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Not excitement, not adrenaline, not a dopamine rush from a like or a win, but real, grounded, quiet joy. And it came from doing something ridiculously simple. I sat at the edge of my bed, feet on the floor, sun cutting through the window blinds, and I said out loud, "If this is the last day I get, thank you. Let me see it fully." That's it. No achievement, no news, no success, just presence. Because here's the thing we don't realize until it's almost too late. You don't need a perfect life to feel perfect joy. You just need presence, and presence is born when you understand the weight of absence. The practice of imagining the worst gave me this. It rewired my brain. It taught me that life is now. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when the conditions are finally perfect. Now. And this is the Stoic miracle. When you strip life down to its bones, when you remove everything you might lose, you finally touch the part of you that can't be taken, and what's left is pure appreciation. Let me give you a wild example. I once did a Stoic challenge. For 7 days, I pretended to lose something important to me each morning. Day 1. My voice. I stayed silent all day and imagined I could never speak again. Every word after that became sacred. Day 2. My sight. I wore a blindfold for 3 hours. When I removed it, colors had never looked so rich. Day 3. My legs. I stayed in bed all day, imagining paralysis. When I stood again, I cried. Day 4. My freedom. I locked myself in a small room for half a day. No phone, no connection. When I walked outside, the breeze felt like a blessing. Day 5. My favorite person. I didn't call them. I didn't text them. I imagined they were gone. That night, I called, and I really listened. Day 6. My time. I scheduled nothing. Let the hours melt into each other. And suddenly, I saw how much life I'd been wasting rushing around. Day 7. My life. I wrote my obituary, sat with it, and then decided to rewrite my life so it matched what I actually wanted to be remembered for. That week changed me. And you don't have to do exactly what I did, but if you just pause, even once a day, and imagine one beautiful thing being taken from you, you'll notice the beauty of it like never before. This isn't a trick, it's a shift in being. The Stoics weren't cold-hearted. They were the warmest people you've never met, because they knew how short and delicate life is, and they used that knowledge to unlock a deeper love for everything. Let me ask you something. Right now, wherever you are. What would you see if you looked around the room and pretended it was all about to disappear? What would you hold tighter? What would you finally say? Why wait? You don't have time to waste being numb. You don't have time to wait until the doctor gives you bad news to finally see your life clearly. You don't have time to live like you have time. Because you don't. The Stoics lived like that. They didn't fear death. They used death as a mirror, as a wake-up call, as fuel. And that's what I want for you. Because when you practice imagining the worst, you start choosing the best. You start waking up early, not because you have to, but because you can. You start holding people tighter, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You start savoring small things. The sound of rain, the smell of coffee, the sound of someone laughing in the next room, because you know they might not be there tomorrow. And you'll begin to notice something strange. Life becomes more beautiful. Not because it changed, but because you did. You stopped being asleep. You stopped numbing. You started noticing. And that is the heart of Stoic wisdom. It's not about rejecting emotions. It's not about being cold or distant. It's about becoming so deeply rooted in reality, so awake to the miracle of being alive, that you stop chasing highs and start feeling your life again. And once you do, even the hardest things become sacred. That heartbreak? It meant you loved deeply. That pain? It means you're still alive. That fear? It means something matters to you. You can use it all. And here's where we land. The Stoics had this one final lesson, and if you remember nothing else, remember this. You could lose everything, so love everything while you have it. Not out of panic, but out of presence. The next time you hug someone, imagine it's the last time. The next time you eat a meal, imagine it's your final bite. The next time you laugh, let it echo. Because you never know. And far from making life sad, that awareness makes life radiant. You start to feel like everything is a gift. Because it is. And here's my final challenge for you. Right now, yes, right now, pause this video, go look in the mirror, and say this out loud. I am alive, and that is enough. Say it again. Feel it. You are alive. Your heart is beating. You can choose. You can love. You can begin again, right now. So start living like you mean it. Not next week. Not when everything's perfect. Today. And if this video moved you, really moved you, don't just like it, don't just share it. Live it. Make your life a thank you note to the fact that it could all be gone tomorrow. That's not depressing. That's power. That's stoicism. And that's how imagining the worst helps you appreciate the best. This ancient practice isn't for the weak. It's for the brave, the ones who are ready to feel again, to wake up, to live. So the next time life feels dull, disconnected, or disappointing, close your eyes, imagine losing it all, then open them. And watch how beautiful the world becomes. The bravest way to live is to love it all, knowing you'll lose it,